Section 0 of Tribal Custom and Anglo-Saxon Law. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Tribal Custom in Anglo-Saxon Law, being an essay supplemental to the English Village Community and the Tribal System in Wales, by Frederic Seebohm, LLD FSA. Published by Longmans, Green and Co. London, New York and Bombay, 1902. Preface. To the two former essays on the English Village Community and the Tribal System in Wales is now at last added in this volume a third on Tribal Custom in Anglo-Saxon Law. In the first essay, an attempt was made to approach the early Anglo-Saxon evidence from the point of view of the manorial system, and mainly by tracing back its connection with the open field system of agriculture, the shell, so to speak, in which it had all along apparently lived. The object of this third essay in the trilogy is to approach the Anglo-Saxon laws from the point of view of tribal custom. As a preliminary to this attempt, a detailed study of Cymric tribal custom was made in the intermediate essay in the belief that the knowledge so gained might be used as a clue to the understanding of survivals of tribal custom in the laws of the tribes most nearly allied to the invaders of Britain, and lastly in the Anglo-Saxon laws themselves. The interval which has elapsed between the publication of the three essays has made it necessary to make each of them, to some extent, independent and complete in itself. It thus becomes necessary in this volume briefly to repeat, as well as further to develop, what was learned of Cymric tribal custom in the previous volume, especially as regards the gwely, or family unit of tribal society, and as regards the methods of payment of the galanas, or death fine for homicide in lieu of the blood feud between kindreds. The death fine, or wergeld, of the continental tribes forms so important a test of the position of classes in tribal society that it became necessary to ascertain at the outset what were the currencies in which the wergelds were stated and paid. A brief explanation of these will be found in the first chapter. Then follows the summary of the Cymric evidence, and as some of the points connected with the payment of wergelds can only be rightly understood when regarded from the point of view of the blood feud for which the wergeld was a substitute, the Cymric evidence is followed by a brief examination of the rules of the feud incidentally revealed in Beowulf. A chapter on Irish or Goidelic tribal custom completes the preliminary evidence. The inquiry into the tribal custom of the continental tribes as revealed in their laws is proceeded with in the following order. First, the Burgundian and Visigothic laws are briefly examined, as showing most clearly the disintegration of tribal custom caused by early contact with Roman and Christian influences. Next are examined the traces of tribal custom in the laws of the Salic and Ripuarian Franks, and of the tribes conquered by the Merovingian kings. Separate consideration is then given to the laws of the tribes conquered by Charlemagne. The earliest Norse and Scanian laws next claim a full share of attention, for, although much later in date than the others, they exhibit earlier conditions of tribal custom. Lastly, after a short chapter on tribal custom in the ancient laws of Scotland, and the leges inter Bretos et Scotos, attention is turned to the Anglo-Saxon laws, and they are approached from the tribal point of view, and the vantage ground afforded by the previous study of the tribal customs of the continental tribes. That by this method of study some fresh light may have been thrown on the conditions of early Anglo-Saxon society, I think the reader will admit, and imperfectly as the work has been done, the bringing of Anglo-Saxon evidence more into line with the continental evidence will, I think, be accepted as a permanent gain. After all, we are but trying to advance a step or two further, as regards some particular points. The general intention of the masterly contributions of Dr. Konrad von Maurer, made nearly half a century ago, to the Kritische Überschau, which I think have hardly been sufficiently kept in view by English historical students. How far the evidence contained in this essay may be found on full consideration to modify previous views of others or my own, the reader will be left to judge. I have tried throughout to bring an open mind to the inquiry from a fresh point of view, with but little regard to foregone conclusions. Any new facts elicited will find their proper place without displacing those already known, however much they may ultimately modify the conclusions provisionally drawn from the latter. The method of inquiry from the known to the unknown is essentially a tentative method. It necessarily leads to results which, if isolated, easily mislead, and may be still more easily misapprehended. But correction comes with perseverance in the same method from other points of view, whilst in the intermediate stages of such an inquiry the student has to learn to be content sometimes with a provisional restatement of a problem rather than a premature solution. It would be absurd to pretend that, were it necessary to rewrite the essay on the English village community after an interval of nearly 20 years, modification of many points might not be needful. But as further additions were called for, it seemed best to leave it as it was, a link in a chain of inquiry which has not yet come to an end. Other links have been added by far more competent inquirers, and these have generously given it a place in the chain from which it would indeed be ungrateful in me to wish to unlink it. But I venture to hope that the addition of this third essay will be accepted not only as a further contribution to the understanding of a difficult subject, but also as evidence that kindly criticism of the former volumes has not been thrown away. For constant help in the preparation of this volume, I am indebted to my son, whose essay on the structure of Greek tribal society really ought to form one of this series. My thanks are due to Dr. Atkinson and Professor Rees for help as regards the Irish and Welsh chapters, and to Mr. Craigie for careful revision of the text and translations of the passages quoted from the early Norse laws, to Professor Lieberman and Mr. W. H. Stevenson for help in the reading of some difficult passages in the Kentish laws. I am especially indebted. I regret very much that I have not had the help which Professor Lieberman's notes to his text of the Anglo-Saxon laws would have been. To Mr. F. G. Hill of the British Museum I owe very much in connection with the study of the currencies used in the various laws. Finally, I cannot too warmly express my gratitude especially to Professor Vinogradov, Professor Maitland, and Mr. W. J. Corbett, amongst others, for the help and encouragement which only fellow workers can give to the otherwise solitary student. The Hermitage, Hitchin, January 1st, 1902. End of preface.